PWNcast.
Episode 20 of PWNcast, part 2 of our Star Wars retrospective. Again, I am joined by Derek, the biggest Star Wars fan in the world.
You're about to find out I hate Star Wars.
Because, he definitely took the lead in the last episode and never talked at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure I fell asleep.
I felt bad, to be honest, because I just kept talking. And I was like, I felt such an unction to keep talking because I had so much to say. And I would look at you, and you would just look at me, and I'd be like, I'm going to keep talking. And you were like, okay. And I just kept going.
To be fair, I was very tired the last time that we recorded. I believe I had worked that day, an 8-hour shift, and we were like, yeah, let's do a podcast. And I'm just kind of sleepy. So, yeah, that's not going to happen again. Also, I believe instead of doing 4 parts of a retrospective, we're just going to mash it into this one because I feel...
Well, we didn't need to do... I think we were going to do 3. We were going to do original, prequels, and then, the extended universe games. But I think we can put that all in because we really don't need to talk about the prequels because we could just say their shit and move on to extended universe.
The real problem with us talking about the prequels is the fact that there are people like Red Letter Media who have gone out and torn these things to shreds. So, I guess we could make up a little bit of a game. Do you want to try a game where you have to defend the prequels, Eric?
We can do that, but I wanted to actually talk about my history with the prequels instead of just really my personal history with them. Because you want to start with that, and then we can go into
defend the leaders of the Trade Federation and their Asian stereotype. Go.
Well, let's understand.
Nothing can get through a shield.
George Lucas is trying to diversify. Okay, he's trying to make Asians look as shitty as possible, but he's putting them in there, so it's technically a good thing.
Well, I have to tell you, man, Chinese trader got that spot on. And by spot on, I mean extremely racist.
So let me ask you, do you remember the first time you saw The Phantom Menace? Did you see it in the theaters?
Yes, I saw The Phantom Menace in theaters. My theater experience for that was not pleasant, actually.
Can we just call it The Phantom Pain? So it's kind of a good thing, but technically it's not because it's still a pain to us.
Oh no, I don't want to insult Metal Gear Solid like that.
That's true.
By
the way, you should play Phantom Pain. It's a great game. 10 out of 10.
It doesn't come out till 2015. Anyway, Phantom Menace in theaters. I've actually seen it twice in theaters in my lifetime. I saw it once during its original run. My grandmother, who knew that I really liked Star Wars, again, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, was the one that gave me the trilogy after my parents decided, there are no more Star Wars movies after A New Hope. Empire doesn't matter. Jedi doesn't matter at all. The story's conclusion.
Just the Death Star blows up and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. And everybody wins. I mean, there isn't an entire empire that's hunting for this terrorist group.
I don't remember if I said this in the last podcast, but when I first watched A New Hope, I just assumed that Luke Skywalker went off and shot those torpedoes and everything else and blew everything else up. And that was it. I told my sister, I was like, yeah, that's how it ends. And then he goes up to those ships and he shoots them with the torpedoes and they blow up too. And Luke Skywalker saves the day.
So he's like a torpedo hero.
He just blows everything up.
It's like the ending. It's like the ending of Independence Day, where they find out how to drop the giant saucers, and then magically every single tribe in Africa with spears and
That's
bows.
Racist, Danny.
No, it's not. I'm still confused by that to this day. I really want to know where the Kenyan Air Force is. Well, Israel can do it. They got an Air Force.
They have the whole continent.
I mean, they're badasses. I mean, come on. Desert Eagle.
Alright, but as we were saying, you went and saw
Phantom Menace. It was painful because of the fact that the audio mix, there was something really wrong with that, and that movie was very, very loud. I guess something was wrong with the theater's sound system at the time. It could have been because they're showing this movie pretty much non-stop during operating hours. They didn't have time to perform maintenance on it. And because of the fact that it came out in 99, I would have been around 7 years old at the time. I thought it was pretty cool. But then again, that's because you can't quite understand what you're looking for.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing. I loved the movie. Like, I remember my cousin didn't. She was a girl, and I don't mean to say that, like, oh, but she just wasn't into that kind of stuff. And I loved it, and we were, like, best friends, and she was like, I don't really like it. I was like, what? It's got chips and lasers and light swords, you know? Like, it's awesome. The Force. And, like, I remember at the time, the midichlorian thing, I didn't care. It was like, whatever. I think I remember thinking, like, oh, that's okay. Whatever. And then later on, I was like, wait a minute, you bastard.
Well, the big selling point for me with The Phantom Menace was that up to this point, when it came to the original trilogy, my favorite characters were the villains. I always found the villains to be a little bit more intriguing than the heroes because, I mean, Boba Fett, obviously he's a giant marketing tool going, hey, look at this guy, he's got cool armor and a jetpack.
He shoots lasers.
He's a guy that hunts down Han Solo, and you got Darth Vader, who is this samurai in an iron lung, and then you have the Emperor, who is basically the devil, and he shoots lightning out of his hands. I thought that was the coolest thing. So the big selling point with The Phantom Menace was, hey, there's this guy, and he's got all these tattoos on his face, and get this, double-sided lightsaber.
Yeah, I remember thinking that was cool when I saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I won't lie, I liked the movie. I liked it a lot, and then
we grew up.
No, not yet, because I watched the Clone Wars. I watched that twice in theaters. I watched it once.
Attack of the Clones?
And then I watched it again. Did I say the Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Excuse me. But then I watched it again, like a Mugs theater with like my best friend and his father, and we sat in the front row, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. But again, I got it on DVD, and I'd watch it on DVD, and there would be parts that I would skip. So like I would watch the beginning, and I would skip all the way till Camino because I enjoyed Obi-Wan, and then that scene where he runs out and Jango Fett shoots at him and he's like pew pew, and that was really cool. And then I would skip again to the asteroid scene, which till this day I think that's one of, this is kind of weird, but I still think that's one of my favorite scenes in a Star Wars movie. One of many. And it's probably one of the only ones that's actually a prequel, because that scene was just so fucking cool with the sound effects.
Oh yes,
and how it blew up and like, and even though I guess that can't happen in space, but we've established that Star Wars is fantasy. It's not science fiction. They walk around inside of a space slug with like rebreathers on, and they're totally fine. It's not fiction, so I don't have a problem with a sonic boom
of sound traveling in space.
And it sounded. I remember sitting in the theaters and it went off, and my skin crawled because it was the coolest thing. Because I think I was 12. At the time, when did it come out? 2002?
Yes.
So I would have been 11. Mm-hmm. So I still think I hated Christian Hayden so much. I knew enough to know that he was bad. I knew enough to know that this is not fun. I hated the Naboo scenes, and even when they got to Geonosis and Tatooine, I was just like, this is boring. It was so boring in the middle, but then it got so much fun when they had like the arena scene. And even when Yoda was like, and like flew stuff around, I digged that when I was little. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people did, at least our age. Like if you're around the age of like 19 to 23, 18 to 23, I have a feeling, I could be wrong, and I could be one of those very few people that like loved it when they were a kid and hates it now. But I have a feeling most people when they were younger enjoyed it because it was just so. They are appealing to kids. Like I will give you this. Like you could watch any Star Wars movie, and as a kid, you're gonna love it. I think it's when you get older that you start to realize the brilliance of, The Empire Strikes Back, and maybe not even the brilliance, but just the faults of the prequels. And what was your experience with?
Attack of the Clones was pretty much a complete opposite experience when it came to The Phantom Menace. I never saw it in theaters. I remember there were ads for this thing everywhere. Like they had an ad for every character.
Let me interrupt. Did you see The Phantom Menace again and dislike it to where you didn't want to see Attack of the Clones?
No.
Like why didn't you see it in the theater?
When I saw, I think it was mostly because of the fact that I was 10 years old at the time, and my parents had no interest whatsoever in taking me to go see Attack of the Clones. I guess they just never really saw fit to take me to the movies, nor was I able to go with any of my friends. Not very many of my friends saw it. I caught it later on DVD, and I really did not like Attack of the Clones that much the first time watching it. I thought, a lot of the common problems that you hear about Attack of the Clones were pretty much my main gripes. This movie takes forever. The love scenes are really boring. I mean, come on, a 10-year-old dealing with love scenes quote love scenes, I should say, you know, it's not exactly entertaining for that demographic. So...
You mean 10-year-old?
I was 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think the reason why I loved it were the scenes, because I loved Obi-Wan, and I still have a soft spot in my heart for him. Ian McGregor's a great actor. But, I would skip, like, once I got the ability to skip parts, I hated the scenes in Naboo and in early Tatooine, and it just bored me. And it was like, now he's murdering these sand peoples, and like, I just didn't care about that. It got to the point like in Geonosis, when you had the transports with the beam lasers, that was fucking awesome. And they shot these like rockets and they blew shit up, and that was fucking awesome. And then the giant laser tanks, and they shot down one of the spheres. It was fucking awesome. And then they're like, oh, it's Dooku, shoot him down with missiles, and like, we're out of rockets. And I was like, use the beam turret! Use the beam! Use the beam!
I did think that at the time Attack of the Clones was pretty cool, because a few years before I had started watching James Bond movies, and I believe it was around the same time that Attack of the Clones came out that I had seen The Man with the Golden Gun, which has Christopher Lee as the main villain. Yeah, so it's pretty like, oh, the Man with the Golden Gun is a Sith Lord in Attack of the Clones. I need to see this. And then you clearly see that it's a stunt double for every scene that you don't see his face is a stunt double, who I might add looks a lot younger than Christopher Lee.
Yeah, it's just, that ends, and then I remember seeing scenes for Revenge of the Sith, and like, I had this half-hearted excitement, but I knew how it was going to end. I've never been someone that enjoys reading or doing something like a prequel that ends, that I know exactly what's going to happen right afterwards. Like, and I don't mean like Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace were building to this point. So technically, when you go into theaters for Phantom Menace, you don't really know what's going on. But in this movie, we all kind of knew what was going to happen. Like, you know, somehow Darth Vader's going to come about and the Jedi are going to die. Like, so there was no excitement for it other than how it happens. And I remember just, as I watched it, I had this uneasy feeling of like, I know what's going to happen, and all these people I like are going to die, whatever. And then it happened, and I was just, and then, again, I will be one of these people who, I enjoyed the lightsaber fight between Yoda and Darth Sidious. I enjoyed it at the time. Now I look back on it and I'm like, whatever, it's CGI. But
it definitely does not highlight their established characters and their abilities.
Yeah, we discussed this, where it's kind of like, they could have, I wish they had done that differently. At the time I loved it. Like, I thought it was so cool how Yoda's like jumping up and down and like on this small platform. And I thought it was so cool at the time. But again, like, then I was like 15, 16, so I was still stupid.
I think that scene would have worked better if Sidious wasn't fighting Yoda, but fighting somebody else, like maybe Mace Windu.
He technically does.
Well, yeah, he does fight him, but just in that particular setting, I felt that this is a very, very big arena to be having a fight, and you're having it between somebody who's a CGI character who's 3 feet tall, and a man who is horribly disfigured shooting lightning out of his hands. I don't really see how this is going to end in a way that their characters are established.
Then the movie ended, and all I could think of was like, pick up Anakin and put him in the lava. Like you have the ability to push him with the Force into the lava. Like, and I think and it bothered me. Like, I wish they had done it differently, in the sense that it was kind of stupid for Obi-Wan, and even mean for him to just leave him there burnt. Like, he's like, I loved you, and he's crying. It's like, put him out of his misery then. Like, why just leave him there burning to death? We're like, that...
Well, I guess it could be so that way Anakin can pay the ultimate price in understanding that...
He's not. He's burning to death. Like,
I know, but he's learning his... I know how cruel it sounds, but he's kind of learning his lesson of the price of betrayal. So...
I don't know. I just always remember thinking, like, I knew it was going to happen again, and that's one thing I don't like about prequels, when it gets to that point where, like, alright, you know exactly what's happening. Like, all I could think of was, like, alright, this would be so much better if you just pushed him into lava, but that's not going to happen, because...
Personally, I blame that mixed message that you're having on the fact that when initially I had imagined Obi-Wan, because, you know, you see him in A New Hope, and he's this older knight of a different age, I could always have seen him being sort of an aggressive character, kind of like, not necessarily a warlord or something like that, but somebody who has seen a lot of horrible things and potentially have done some terrible things. But
I have the exact opposite feeling.
Really?
I feel as though he's...
Well, this was the first time that I had watched the trilogy as well.
I feel as though
later
he's, like,
on down the
very
road.
sophisticated. And I think maybe that's why they had him walk away, because they couldn't have him outright murder Anakin. And that was the feeling, like, Obi-Wan can't just murder Anakin. He's too sophisticated for that. And that's okay. I feel as though if that's the case, then when they had him fight, they should have had, like, Anakin fall off to quote-unquote his death, but not really. And Obi-Wan not know that until later when he realizes Darth Vader is... He can feel that Darth Vader is actually Anakin.
Yeah, you could have...
But because that monologue of him screaming, "You were the chosen one," blah, blah, blah. I remember hearing people talk about it at school and they laughed about it, and I was like, you should not be laughing at this. Like, I don't think the writers and George Lucas intended that to be laughed at, because it was kind of laughable. I mean...
Now, there is one huge edit that I still remember to this day about Revenge of the Sith from the time that I saw it in the theaters to the point where it got released on DVD. And that is the fact that in the theater, Obi-Wan Kenobi, after he cuts off Anakin's legs and he's down there burning to death and he's having that monologue, he is much closer to the lava pool, and then in the DVD they edit him further up the hill, which that has always bothered me to this day. I'm almost positive that was edited. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but I always remember him being a lot closer to the lava than he was in the DVD release.
I haven't seen the movie in a long time, so...
And I mean, Revenge of the Sith, even though...
I haven't seen a lot of them in a long time. Because here's... I guess to end my history of the prequels, like, after that I was kind of like, okay, you know, there were some really cool parts to the movie, you know, like the battle between... Actually, I remember disliking the battle between Grievous. I thought it was cool how he, like, twisted his lightsabers, but it was so, like, you can tell that Obi-Wan is just looking at a green screen, and they're kind of just telling him, like, do this, and they cut it. I'll give you that, as far as movie-making wise, it's cool how they actually CGI'd that in and had him actually fight with a object that's not there. That's kind of cool. I'll give you that. But at the same time, you can tell... I remember being so underwhelmed by it because it was kind of built up in the movie that Obi-Wan's going to fight Grievous. And especially if you watched the Clone Wars, which I did, the 5-minute clips before Attack of the Clones came out, that were so cool, and Grievous was such a badass.
That installment was a big deal. I remember when Cartoon Network announced that, and that was a really big deal, and I watched that, and I'm like, okay, this is going to make for a pretty interesting character when it comes Revenge of the Sith time.
Yeah. And then... he's a crippled...
And then he turns into this character, which I'm sitting here the entire time watching Revenge of the Sith of...
a comical crippled...
Why doesn't a Jedi just pick him up with the Force, slam him up against a wall several times, or crush him?
Well, I mean, if you saw at the end of that series, Mace Windu, because at the beginning of the third movie, you see that he has this he's wheezing and coughing, and the reason he's doing that is because you see in... the Clone Wars, Mace Windu actually, like, uses, I guess, a Force crush and, like, crushes his breastplate in and makes him start coughing and wheezing. That's why he's, like, that's why he's wheezy the whole time. And it does beg the question why they do that. But at the same time, when you watched him fight I think it was 5 Jedi, it was,
yeah, it was
Kai Mindu, the guy with the cone head, who's a pretty cool badass. And then, like, another Jedi Knight, and, like, I think 3 Padawans is kind of like what they're supposed to be, and he's so quick and agile, and like he can use his claws to grab stuff that I don't think that would work, specifically because he's just so quick, and so he can, like, you could try to pick him up, but he would, like, his claws would grapple the floor, and, like, I don't know, he would...
Yeah,
that's why I'm trying to say, like, in the movie, obviously, yes, because he's so big and cumbersome that you could just kind of pick him up and throw him, like, haha, but the way he was built up, to me, was so cool.
He even had, like, a horror vibe to him.
Yeah, because
he's just lurking. He's lurking in the shadows or whatever, and, you know, he's like...
And the guy starts running away, and he just falls on top of him and kills him. And
you see that shot of him just, like, drawing the 2 sabers out, getting ready for it, and he's just hiding in the shadows.
If you guys don't know what we're talking about, like, Google Clone Wars, because you're going to get the new one. You'll find it, just like the Clone Wars, Grievous versus Kai... what do you say?
I believe it's the Gennady Tartakovsky animated stuff.
Just
the same guy
go
from
over
Dexter's
what Danny just said a few times to where you can get the name and Google that, or we could possibly, I don't know. I'll see if I can link it in a comment. But it is one of the coolest things I remember about that television show, because there were a few other minor antagonists that were okay, like what was her name?
Asajj Ventress.
Yeah, who was okay, but Grievous was the key piece that was a total badass.
And you know what? I thought that the build-up that they had in that 5-minute short, like, you see none of that in Revenge of the Sith. You don't see him being cunning, being a guy who lurks in the shadows, uses stealth or anything
you see him,
like that.
ray shields. Oh, we should have thought about this. How did we get caught in this? And you're just like that's another thing. If we can just kind of focus on Revenge of the Sith and then move on from the prequels. But the tone in that, in the beginning, we're going to talk about tone again, is just, it's supposed to be the darker of the prequels. I think that's what it was. Everyone loved it, or at least the people that liked the movie were like, oh, I liked it because it was the darkest one, and it was really dark. And then you start the movie, and it's comical. It's comical. And then all of a sudden it kind of gets dark, and then it gets comical. And then Anakin kills Count Dooku, and it's dark again, and then it's comical again.
He decapitates him after cutting his hands off.
And then it's comical again. And the problem is that movie has the tone in the beginning of the movie just is never set. And then towards, I guess, the rest of the movie, it gets darker and darker. But just that whole beginning sequence just doesn't give you a good foundation of the fact that it's going to be dark. The only reason people think it's dark is because Obi-Wan massacres a shit ton of Jedi, which is just...
Oh, you mean Anakin?
Excuse me, Anakin. And I don't think that's dark. I just think that's, like, brutal. It's not dark to me. It's just...
To me, it's like, well, somebody's got to do it. I mean, we got to establish a Jedi shortage for
a theme here. So yeah, I mean, it just has a bad opening theme, and I think you could have, since you kill off Count Dooku, who was the main antagonist in the second movie, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to have an antagonist that's good, and obviously I understand that the Emperor is going to be that main one that's kind of lurking in the shadows, but you need like a James Bond villain. Like Objob.
A henchman.
Excuse me, yeah, a henchman. And I don't think they did a good job with General Grievous.
Yeah.
Who could have done, and I think if they had a really cool General Grievous, I would have given that movie a little bit more than, because I think Christian Haydenson matured a little bit, and he was a better actor in that movie, and it was more tolerable, but it was still just kind of like bland. I felt that movie was bland. Whereas the first two were just bad. That one was bland. And I think we can move quickly into, before we move on from the prequels, when did you realize they were bad movies? Because to me, it was towards, I kind of figured they were bad movies after I watched Revenge of the Sith. I kind of just was like, yeah, these aren't really good.
I always had this kind of feeling in my gut when I watched Attack of the Clones, because that one really kind of instilled this thought of, is the third one going to be better than this? Because frankly, other than maybe the short time that Obi-Wan and Jango Fett have their little thing on Kamino, and...
Which, not to interrupt you, again, I love that, and they didn't follow through with it. Like, again, like, they had Obi-Wan and Jango, which had this cool hero versus villain vibe that wasn't really totally ingrained in the plot. Like, it was kind of like a side plot issue, like Grievous and Obi-Wan was supposed to be, but they just failed with that in the third movie, I feel like. Yeah. There wasn't that cool part where you're like, oh, I can't wait for... Because, like, they built up on the fact that Obi-Wan's going to find Grievous and attack him, and you're like, oh, yeah, and then, like, he just falls down, and
then he shoots him. He shoots him.
And then it's because so uncivilized. Like, that gun just saved your life, Obi-Wan.
I mean, look at Luke. He's not afraid to use a gun.
That's why Luke's a badass.
Yeah, man. Luke Skywalker for the win. Of course, Return of the Jedi after... Luke Skywalker. That's the good years of Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi, and then after, because before that, it's just all, I just wanted to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. What does that even mean?
So you said, you admit, now did you what was your thought about, I didn't ask you about Revenge of the Sith.
I saw Revenge of the Sith at midnight. That was a huge deal. And I remember I had school the next day, and I even saw my world history teacher in the 7th grade at the midnight release. So it was pretty cool. We just talked about that. For all of the next class, that was pretty much all we were talking about was Revenge of the Sith. I did have some problems with it. I didn't like how Grievous was portrayed on screen at all. I thought he was a very annoying character. I would have much preferred if...
Comical. Like I said, he's a comical... That was his I think George's way of having a comical.
Yeah.
Whereas in the TV series he was a badass, and even the new TV series he's comical now. I mean, like, they kind of followed the movie's portrayal of having him kind of like.
Yeah. Well, you notice how Jar Jar Binks, ever since the backlash that happened with Episode 1, he just progressively just gets outed.
Yep.
I mean, he has a few lines in Attack of the Clones. He maybe has one paragraph of lines, and in the third movie, you just see him for 4 seconds. Or
doesn't he vote? Oh, he votes emergency powers in the second.
Well, yeah, that was Attack of the Clones. Okay. That was his one paragraph, and then in the third movie, he's there.
Fellow delegates.
Yeah, Dello-Felegates. That's it.
Dello-Felegates.
Oh God.
Fuck. we just died inside a little bit.
I think. You ever noticed about the Phantom Menace how the scenes where Jar Jar is doing something that none of the characters ever pay attention to what's going on?
Really, well, no, he's there.
Well, yeah, they did have an actor that was standing there that was doing all of this stuff, but nobody really ever aquenouledges.
And let's just, alright, look, this is like one of the last things we'll talk about, and you have something else to offer about the prequels. I think Qui-Gon Jinn's character is vastly overrated. Vastly overrated, okay? He is a moronic idiot fool, okay? He lands on Tatooine and says, we shouldn't be suspicious, so what does he bring? An alien from another planet, which granted, you could argue there probably had been some what are they called?
Well, no, they're in Mos Eisley. So it's like a giant melting pot.
So yeah, maybe they would see Gungans, but maybe you shouldn't bring an alien that's never left his home planet, who has already, you've seen, been a troublemaker, who, while you're walking through the streets of Mos Eisley, does nothing but get in trouble. Like, the only reason they bring him along is to develop plot developments with him and Bulbasaur.
Bulbasaur.
Fuck. What is his name?
Oh God. Watto?
No, not Watto. The main driver antagonist. Pod racer antagonist.
Sebulba.
Bulbasaur, Sebulba.
Now this is pod racing.
Oh, well, you know what? I have one more game we can do about the prequels, and then we can move on. But yeah, like, and then he actually, you should just watch. I know this is the corner or whatever. You should watch the Plinkett. The Plinkett
Butter Media stuff.
Yeah, because he does it Qui-Gon Jinn, and he has a gin bottle floating up in the air because he just feels like Qui-Gon Jinn is drunk on gin because then he goes to Wadu and he wants this part for a ship, and Wadu's like, no, I'm not going to take Republic credits. So instead of maybe going to another shop and trying to exchange his credits for another currency or find another shop,
He doesn't go to First Republic National and get a currency exchange?
No currency exchanges. I'm sure there's somewhere on Mos Eisley that would take Republic credits. I'm positive this place has been a starport for thousands of years. Like, but no, apparently not. And then his character is awful. Now, I had me and my friend talked about this, and I feel as though these movies would have been tremendously better if they had casted Anakin in the first movie as like a 15-year-old punk. Not punk, but like someone who's cocky.
Yeah.
So that way when Attack of the Clones comes around, it's not this like sudden surprise of when did you become a total asshole.
Yeah, the arrogance.
Because he goes from being this cute little kid who, mind you, is a horrible actor and you're like, whatever. But he's still a cute little kid and you're like, oh yeah, he blew up the Trade Federation ship, which by the way is by itself now at the end of the film. That blockade, remember that blockade? It's all gone. There's just one ship now, one Trade Federation ship. But he's this cute little kid. I think it would have been better if they found him and he was like a... And this would have also helped with the whole he's too old to be trained, just like his father. Because, Luke was like 22, 24.
Yeah, he was easily like 20, 21 or something like that.
Anakin's like 9 and 8 when he gets trained. So, I think the theme would have been better as like father and son being so powerful in the Force that they didn't need... Age wasn't a restriction for them. Is if they had been older than 8... You know what I mean? If his father had been older than 8. So, like, they get there. He's this great mechanic. You can see he has potential in the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn finds out. And he's, like, 15 years old. And he's kind of cocky. And he's kind of like an asshole. Not like... I think that. He's not an asshole. But he's definitely cocky and full of himself. And that way, the pod racing scene, which, by the way, I actually really like that scene. I think that scene could have been much better if it wasn't an 8-year-old kid not really knowing what he's doing and just being like, all right, like you can tell they just told him, all right, do this and do this, you know. And
I think that sequence takes way too long.
I disagree.
Do.
I really like that scene. I think it could have been better if he was older and he was more cocky and he was a little more aggressive and like actually hitting other people instead of just like. Because I don't think he ever attacks another driver. I think it'd been cool if he like banged into another one and like actually been a little more aggressive and a little cocky. And it kind of that flows into the fact he's a great pilot, not just the fact that he's an 8-year-old kid who's a great pilot. Like you actually see him being a great pilot.
I already don't enjoy watching stuff like NASCAR anyway, so why would I want to watch an intergalactic?
That's totally different though, because this like things are exploding. There's
Formula One racers can in a Grand Prix can explode.
Well, Formula One's probably more entertaining than NASCAR.
Oh, the crashes are a lot more lethal. That's for sure.
So then Attack of the Clones happens 4 years later. So now he's 19. He's had 4 years of Jedi training, and like in those 4 years, he has progressed a lot. He's like awesome. He's 19 years old. He's a hot shot. He wants to be an actual Jedi Knight soon. You know, he's kind of rubbing this way when he comes off arrogant like he does in the movie. It's not surprise. It's not like, where did this come from? It's not like, he must have to be this way because he's gonna be Darth Vader. Because when you watch the second movie, like, he's arrogant because he's Darth Vader. He has to fall on the dark side. So now you kind of get this feeling because you've seen him already as kind of this cocky, you know, confident. Because when, like, you know, you see people who are skilled from like age one, like basketball players, like Michael Jordan was a cocky motherfucker. Like he was a motherfucking deadly ass. He would destroy you when he played, and he was that way because he was always so good that he was like, dude, I'm better than you. Like, and like that's how I had this feeling. Like they have Anakin who is incredibly skilled, and he's old, and he's like he feels this way, and you see it when he's 15, and this way when he leaves his mother, it's not like he's kind of like, all right, you know, I'll be back for you though because I know I'm good enough to be back for you. And then you go to the Clone Wars. He's now 19. It's now not weird. It's not weird that he fell in love with Padme when he was 9 years old. Like, when you're 15 years old and you fall in love with someone, okay, I can kind of see that, whatever.
Yeah, because wasn't there, like, a 5-year gap between their age or something like that? That's the kind of vibe
She was supposed to be 14, which Natalie Portman is not 14 in that movie.
No, not at all. So, yeah, like a
he
4
was
or
like,
5
yeah,
year
so it's
gap.
5 years. So that way, he's 15, she's 20.
That's not too far.
He's 19,
though.
She's now 24. So that's totally acceptable for them to fall in love.
Well, not really. That's not really that big of an age gap when you think about it.
No. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, if the first movie had been him 15 and her 20, you see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Now we kind of see this whole, like, okay, you know, that makes sense that they're falling in love with each other because she finds this, like, rugged, you know, confident, kind of cocky, and she kind of likes it, and he saves her life somehow, I don't know, whatever. And this way he can be involved in the plot, and he might actually be able to be the protagonist of that movie. Because, by the way, The Phantom Menace doesn't have a protagonist, okay? There's no protagonist. And also, I even kind of like the idea if you merge Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn into just Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan finds him, and Obi-Wan's like 20. No, Obi-Wan's like 23, so Obi-Wan's kind of young as himself, and he finds him, and he's like, all right, I can mentor you. And then 4 years later, we kind of realize that maybe Obi-Wan was a little not ready yet to have this cocky...
A little too ambitious.
Yeah, a little too ambitious. And his Padawan is super ambitious. And then, you know, we go like maybe... The Clone Wars start when he's 19, and then we get to Revenge of the Sith when he turns like 23. So it's been 3 more years. So now you have this friendship. You can see that there's a friendship between a 23-year-old and like a 30-year-old. Obi-Wan's 30, he's 23. You can kind of see how they would actually be friends because they've been close since for now 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's 23, Padme's 28. That's totally acceptable for them to be in love. You know, so I think that would have made a much better character story instead of him being 8 in the first movie and you're not really understanding what his role is in the...
Here is now
how would you make him better?
The thing about this is I don't know necessarily if I could make these movies better other than to completely erase them from history.
MIB.
There are a few things that I do want to say about the prequels in closing, I guess, for this particular segment. First off, I mentioned this to you off mic. The Jedi, they introduced this whole plot with the prophecy of how... You know, there is going to be this chosen one that brings balance to the Force. I would just like to point out that there are...
Don't listen to Danny, this is bullshit.
Let's just say that there are 8 million Jedi in the galaxy, just for shits and giggles.
Wait, not that many.
Not that many?
Who
cares? 8 million of them. You have the rule of 2 when it comes to the Sith. So you always have 2 Sith going on at once. And you believe that this boy will bring balance to the Force? You guys do know... You guys do know that bringing balance means all of you are going to die, but 2 of you? So, who are you left with at the end of the prequel trilogy? Yoda and Obi-Wan? So I guess he did bring balance?
Oh, and then continue on.
I don't know. I just think that's...
Because then listen to this, guys. When Obi-Wan dies... Luke replaces him, so it's Luke and Yoda, 2 and 2, everybody. And then get this.
And then Yoda dies, and then it's Luke and Leia.
It's Luke and Leia. Oh.
And then it's like...
But what happens when Vader and the Emperor die? I don't know. He can't explain that.
Well, no, because then the Zahn trilogy happens, which is EU, but...
Speaking of EU...
No, I'm not done yet.
Oh, God damn it.
Also, only good thing about Revenge of the Sith is... Palpatine just hamming it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely... I mean, the whole unlimited power line was the best laugh that I got out of that movie. And then you just see Sam Jackson flying out of a window while being electrocuted. You gotta think, about 20 minutes later, his body finally hits the ground at the bottom of Coruscant, and it's just electrified and kind of nasty. And then... Prequels... I don't necessarily believe that they are the worst movies ever made. I think that that's completely unfair.
I mean, Sharktornado exists.
Well, yeah, Sharknado exists. And
Megalodon versus Shark.
I understand.
would like to hear pussy exists.
I understand the outrage and the betrayal that people got when they watched the prequel trilogy. I mean, people who loved the original trilogy, people like you who loved The Empire Strikes Back. I understand where your anger is coming from. I'm not saying they're good movies. But I am saying that they're not the worst movies, especially in the science fiction genre, or fantasy for that matter. They are not the worst movies out there. End of prequels. Don't watch them. Well, maybe watch them once for a good laugh.
While you're drunk.
Yeah. Get a couple of friends over, just open up a couple of beers, and then watch the love story unfold. I can't fall in love with you, I'm a senator. What does that have to do with anything? And then we go into something that I want to mention to you. Rotten Tomatoes is a website, for those who don't know. It does movie ratings. And I would like to go through the list comparing the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy. So, A New Hope stands at a 93%, which is pretty damn good. As opposed to The Phantom Menace, which currently stands at a 57%, which is not good at all. You have The Empire Strikes Back at a 96%.
Best one, bitches.
And then you have Attack of the Clones at a 67%.
It's vastly overrated.
I actually think Attack of the Clones is worse than The Phantom Menace, but I would have marked it much lower than that. I probably would have put it in the 40 range, just because of how... pacing, pretty much. Then you get to Return of the Jedi, which is a 79%.
Which, I think that's a little... I think I would give it like an 80... I don't
85.
know.
85
I would say
would
80.
Be fair.
I think 80 is good, because that movie is great, and then it has serious tone issues that just bother me.
And then Revenge of the Sith gets an 80%.
Which, I don't get that at all.
Yeah, how does that get a higher score?
I think a lot of people were just like, oh, it's the last Star Wars movie, and it's dark.
It's going to be the last Star Wars movie ever made. Oh, wait. Star Wars Episode 7. Can't wait for Jason Solo. Okay, extended universe time. There is a lot of EU when it comes to Star Wars. There's at least 40 years of history after Return of the Jedi.
And 4004.
Yeah, and there's you got Knights of the Old Republic floating out there.
And even before that with
the Sith Empire. Yeah, way before that. And, what are some of your recommended works of the extended universe?
Hold on.
Oh, you got something on your shelf?
Yes, I do. You continue talking.
Personally,
I'm back. I got it. The only actual EU I've ever read from Star Wars, I plan on reading the Thrawn trilogy soon, but it was the X-Wing books by Michael A. Stackpole. He wrote, I think it was...
He wrote a lot of EU...
There was 5 books.
Star Wars
and it was about... Actually, here we go. It's Rogue Squadron, Wedge's Gamble, The Krytos Trap, and then the 4th book is The Back to War, and I think that's it. And then he has another book. He has one more book about the main character of these books called Koran, who he's actually a Jedi and he turns into a Jedi. But I love these books so much because one of my favorite things about Star Wars was the space battles. I love the space battles, and this was about Rogue Squadron after the Battle of Endor and like the things that they did and how cool they were. And one of the things I loved about this book was there's a part in it where they're on the ground and there's stormtroopers coming after them, and he's like, oh no, stormtroopers, they have that battle armor that's really hard to penetrate, and they have that Deadeye aim. And I read that and laughed because I was like, well, obviously you haven't seen Return of the Jedi. Just go get some Ewoks and you'll be totally fine.
When it comes to the extended universe, I have read a lot of stuff. I've read the Thrawn trilogy, which is exceptional. I believe that if there were going to be a 7, 8, and 9, but if they were going to announce it probably at the same time that they were doing the prequels, like instead of doing the prequel trilogy, they did a sequel trilogy. I think that would have been the perfect era to do the Thrawn trilogy, but now I fear, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, they're a little too old for that era because I believe the Thrawn trilogy takes place 7, 8 years after Return of the Jedi.
I can find it right now. Because the Star Wars X-Wing by Michael Stackpole was 3 years after Return of the Jedi.
Or does that timeline only cover the X-Wing stuff?
No, because it goes into Heir to the Empire, Dark Forces Rising, The Last Command is 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
By Timothy Zahn, which Timothy Zahn has run a lot. And then you have the Jedi Academy trilogy, which is 7 years.
Which is another good one. The Jedi Academy
Children
trilogy.
of the Jedi, which is 8 years. Darksaber, which is immediately thereafter, I guess, so it's 9 years. The Crystal Star, 10 years. The Black Fleet Crisis was 12 years after the Return of the Jedi. The New Rebellion is 13 years after the Return of the Jedi. The Corellian trilogy is 14. I think it ends there, so I know.
Oh yeah, there's.
It doesn't go into Yugo-san.
Oh yeah, the Yuuzhan Vong War goes all the way up until 40 years after Return of the Jedi. It's pretty far down the line. The Jedi Academy trilogy, I highly recommend that you personally read that because it's Luke starting up the Academy on Yavin 4, and also one of his students finding the tomb of Exar Kun, which, playing Knights of the Old Republic, you probably have heard that name mentioned, a very powerful Sith Lord. And Exar Kun comes back using the power of the dark side and takes over this apprentice, and basically becomes the biggest threat that Luke has ever faced, having to deal with a Sith Lord that is much powerful than his father was, or even himself.
And much more powerful than Palpatine's bitch ass.
Well, it's funny that you should mention Palpatine because of the Yuuzhan Vong War, which is an alien race from outside the known galaxy, comes in, starts invading the New Republic, and they use this kind of biomechanical technology. It's infused with their bodies.
Don't they shoot like lava?
I don't remember exactly what they do, but I also believe that they're force resistant.
And like I thought their ships like actually shoot like lava or like very high temperature liquid. I'm not sure. I didn't read the books. I remember.
I don't really remember. It's been a very long time since I've read it, but it does raise the question of the motivations behind Palpatine's taking over and making an empire. Because before you say these things, like, George Lucas is not that. Well, no, George Lucas didn't write that. He didn't write all the Yuuzhan Vong stuff.
I understand that, but I still, like, his character was written by George Lucas and had intentions by George Lucas. He was a power-hungry madman, who fit in the trope of what...
But I think George Lucas set up that possibility with the fact that they hint at the...
I'm shrugging right now, everyone.
Yeah, they hint at the fact that Palpatine has some form of clairvoyance, whether it's not exactly that powerful, but he uses language in Return of the Jedi such as "I have foreseen it."
Luke has very powerful clairvoyance.
No, Anakin does. I mean, he watched his wife die in his nightmares with his Terminator arm,
and he didn't understand that He was reason. Whatever.
So, I mean, what? It's a very interesting theory that maybe Palpatine was just raising an army of
it does kind of go in, like,
stormtroopers to fight all of these.
Like, if we can kind of jump into, like, Knights of the Republic, which is my favorite part of Star Wars, maybe. Other than Empire Strikes Back in the original trilogy, it would be Knights of the Republic, where, like, Revan, the Sith Empire, you never really hear... You always hear that he, like, attacks strategical, but then when Malak takes over, he's just much more... Ruthless, and he's just trying to take everything over and, like, blow everything out. Like, he just blows up Terrace because why not?
He just wants to.
And then you realize that Revan had, like, this. He knew he had forgotten that he had been, warped by the Emperor, and he knew something was out there, and he was, like, trying to build up this army with the Starforge and take over the Republic and get it all under him, so he could build up this military and be ready for it. And that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah, well. When it comes to
Which, by the way, I still think the book Revan is technically EU, not games. And as someone who loves the character of Revan so much, he's one of my favorite characters in the Star Wars universe.
Oh, I would ruined him, though.
Yeah, I would recommend you not read that book because it really makes him...
Oh, I'm talking about the Old Republic. I think they completely ruined him in that. They kind of turned him into a bit of a lackey when you think about it. Like, this is a character that's introduced in the first game as this very, very powerful... Force user. I mean, this guy is ridiculously strong, and he pretty much becomes a henchman.
Well, no, you fight him in like I think an instance, and it's like like a 5-player instance, and you fight him, and once you defeat him, he says something, and then he disappears. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And I want to play Star Wars Knights of the Republic 3.
Yeah, I really, especially after the massive failure of the Old Republic, I believe that should be, if they're going to use the Star Wars license again, I believe that's what they need to do, is that they need to go back to their roots with Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, which I know we disagree on this greatly, but I believe KOTOR 2 is a much better game.
I don't think it's a much better game. I think it had the potential of being so, but you can't, I don't know, I mean, like... I guess we can just go on from EU now and start on games, but... Well,
it's a little bit of both when you think about it.
True, it is, because it spawned a pretty good deal of EU in itself. But the first game was complete, and it had a complete story arc. The second game was not. Whether or not you want to say that the mods fixed it, they did, but it took mods to fix the game.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I'm not saying that it's
the combat. Look, I would much rather play KOTOR 2 than KOTOR 1, because the combat is much funner. Like, the whole, like, they added new I think they added that they increased the level cap. They added more animations. It was a better. I think the engine was a little bit better. But as far as like a game that like to me mattered more, it was by far KOTOR 1, because to me it was the only reason KOTOR 2 existed was because that game. I understand it's the first one in the series, but. And I don't get me wrong, I loved the second game. I loved it a lot. Like I think I probably played the same amount in the second game as the first one, and I enjoyed playing as Exile, and that whole story arc with Kreia, who was a really good antagonist. But I still feel like the whole Dark Starforge and your relationship with Bastila was awesome.
Mm-hmm. So the three things, my 3 things here of why KOTOR 2 is better than the first one is. First off, you have way better companions. I'm sorry, but Karth is one of the most annoying people I have ever run into in a video game. I do not like Karth at all. All he does is whine, complain, oh, well, we could have done it this way. Well, you know what, Karth, how about you go that way? Better combat, as we've already established. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is, but I felt KOTOR 2 was easier to get into than the first one. I felt that the first one kind of thrusts you in with this... It's somewhat of an iffy difficulty level. I've always felt that the first one is a lot more difficult compared to KOTOR 2. That and the fact that when somebody sees a Star Wars RPG and that you can play as a Jedi or a Sith, what is the first thing that they want to unlock in that game?
A lightsaber.
Exactly. And how long does it take you to get a lightsaber in the first one?
About the same amount of time as the second one.
Oh, really?
No, the second one you have to actually go to like 2 planets to get it.
Yeah, but then you have to go to 3 or 4 different planets in the first one to go get the parts.
You go Terrace and you go Dantooine and you have it. You have it like a third of the way. No, not even like a quarter of the way in Dantooine. You get
Are
it.
you sure? I
I'm
remember
positive.
it being a lot longer
I'm
than
positive.
that.
It's
I
just
had
Terrace.
to find parts.
It's just Terrace drags. Terrace kind of drags.
Definitely.
Even though I still love Terrace because it's kind of that like tutorial where like you really learn everything and like you start to learn like, oh, this is what's going on, and then you meet Bastila, and then technically you can play as her with her lightsaber, and then you go to Dantooine. And you go. There is a lot of dialogue in that where you're learning about being the Force, but once you get through that, you have your lightsaber. Whereas the second one, and don't question me because I played both of these games recently, and I know the second one, you wake up on the I can't remember, on the asteroid station. You go through that, then you go to Telos, and then you're on Telos for a while, and then you leave Telos, and you can either go to Dantooine, you can go to Nar Shaddaa.
And then
Corbin and Onderon, which I think Onderon is probably one of the best planets in all the games. Onderon was a lot of fun. But if you go to Dantooine, I think it's the easiest because you can pick up, I think, two of the crystals you need, and then you can go to, I think, Nar Shaddaa and buy one, and then you can make it. But, like, you don't, if you follow just strictly, like, playing the game, you don't get it until your second planet.
That's really, I always remembered getting the lightsaber in the second one a lot faster than the first game. It could have been
because like Telos takes a while because you have to go on the actual station, and then you actually go to the Arctic place. No, you go on this planet, the surface. You run on the surface, and then you go to the Arctic temple where you find the Ebon Hawk, and then you leave Telos, and then Kreia is like, all right, we're gonna go to these 4 planets because we had to find the Jedi Masters in these 4 planets, and once you hit 2 of those, I think it's like 1.5 of those planets you get it. I'm pretty sure. Or either that or it's the first planet you go to, you get it. You can get it at the first planet you go to because you have to you actually have to build it with one of your companions. I disagree with you about companions though because Jolee Bindu was one of my favorite in all the games. He was awesome. He was kind of like the only Jedi who I ever met who wasn't like a full good Jedi or wasn't a full bad Jedi who was actually like just
neutral.
Awesome. Yeah, like I would like, why aren't more Jedis like you? Where he's just like, yeah, like every now and then I want to use Force Lightning and I do it and it's okay. Like Kreia is the same way, but then you realize she's a crazy psycho bitch.
He's basically Black Kyle Katarn.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious. Like you start actually talking to him about stories and stuff, and he's like, yeah, one time, and he tells you about this one guy who got sucked into a vapor port and like blows up the whole ship, and you're like, and he's laughing about it, and you're like, you're awesome. Like I want you as my grandfather and. HK-47.
Well, he's in both games.
He is, but you have to.
Yeah.
He's still in the first one. He's awesome in the first one.
I guess
Canderous,
it's because...
And you can't say Mandalore because he's different as Mandalore.
Yeah.
Canderous is a total badass. And you don't really know if he is Mandalore.
The thing
Mission
about...
and Zarbar are awesome.
The thing about it, I believe the reason why I like the companions more in the second one is because I'm always drawn more to the darker side of characters. Because, obviously in the first one, yeah, you have people like Jolee who can easily switch their moral alignment.
Well, you have
of the hat.
Well, if you're talking about bad characters, Canderous is definitely red. Who else is red in the first game?
Well, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that Canderous may be red.
He was red when you get him. He's red.
Yeah.
As far as like his light level, he's always in the bottom.
But I think the way that his character's written is more of a neutral when you think
he's not neutral. He's more like a. He's not neutral, but he's not
a chaotic neutral.
He's like a ruthless, like, I'm gonna do what I need to do to better...
Well, typically bounty hunters and mercenaries are more of a neutral.
I will agree.
They don't care which side
there's
they're
obviously,
fighting
like, you can get the evil Wookiee in the second game, who's just fueled by hatred. Because if you kill, if you kill the bounty hunter girl, he follows you.
Oh.
I will say that, like, the bounty hunter girl, I can't remember her name. I liked her character, I did. And I think both games, like, because I liked Atton a lot. Mm-hmm. He's a better Karth in my opinion. I loved Atton. I would always play female so I could romance him, because I'm totally gay. But, no, but I just liked talking to him. He was always cool, because he had this, like, inner secret, and you find out later on that he was actually with the Sith, and he killed Jedi. And he feels terrible about that now, since you're a Jedi and everything. But he has this kind of, like, dark secret past that you kind of get a hint at when he talks to Kreia, and he was. I always loved him.
Yeah, he does that little trick in his head where he's constantly running through numbers, so that way people can't read his mind. I thought that was a clever thing to do.
He was like a cooler version of Karth. Karth was like bland, and I liked Karth. I didn't dislike him.
Karth, Caden, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, he was okay. He was more like, all right, you're my pal, and we're gonna go me, you, and Bastila are gonna go save the world. Okay,
I didn't like the
Bastila. I don't think you had a Bastila in the second game that was on her level of like. You could say Kreia, but
no, I would say Kreia.
Piece.
I would say Visas was pretty much your Bastila replacement.
I disagree.
Because she's kind of... There's a lot more to her than meets the eye. First off, she's blind.
True. Haha, puns, everybody.
Second off, she's been in the presence of the main antagonist for a long time. Well, yeah, one of the main antagonists. Which Darth Nihilus is very interesting in the fact that he has no physical body. He's just a living embodiment of the dark side.
Isn't he hate?
Yeah.
I think he's a
living embodiment.
The other one's
of
pain, and then she's betrayal. It's betrayal, pain, and hate. And he's hate.
Oh, a guy who sleeps on daggers.
Yeah. No, sleeps with vibra swords.
Vibra swords.
That's why I love Adden. Did you see a guy who sleeps with vibra swords?
I don't even remember what that guy's name was. I can't for the life of me.
Even though he's probably more important than Nihilus.
Yeah.
He's fucking hard in that game.
I actually checked him into submission. Because you can do that.
Because he'll let you go by and he'll be like, yeah, you're
better than I am.
And he's like, I hate my life.
I love it. I love it when games, like, I understand why boss fights are there and all of that, but I'm not saying that I do this because I want
New Vegas?
Yeah, like New Vegas, the final, quote, boss, you can just speech check into submission.
You have to have 100 speech, though.
Well, I always have 100 speech because I like to win every single argument with anybody that I come across in the world. It's the best thing ever. Love just being able to bypass stuff like that. And then you can just turn around and shoot them with, like, a sneak attack and they die in one hit.
I still think, to me, KOTOR 1 mattered more. KOTOR 2, though, I honestly, if you're gonna rate them, like, KOTOR 1 would be a 10 out of 10, KOTOR 2 is like a 9, and if they had had the game complete, it probably would have been a 10 out of 10. Like,
I played both games on the original Xbox, and the thing that really disappointed me about the first one is that when you see Revan, before you, spoiler alert, and then again, this really shouldn't count as a spoiler alert.
If you don't want to find out what goes on, just stop.
Well, no, the game's over a decade old, so I mean...
Well, they know now. So
yeah, you find out that you're Darth Revan, and he wore this really badass armor, and you don't get to wear that in the game, unless you're on the PC and you just mod it.
No, if you go to the dark side, you can wear it.
You can get it? Because I went to the dark side and I never got it. I know with mods you can get it.
I'm pretty sure you can wear it. I'm pretty sure when in the Starforge you can make the armor, and you can wear it if you're on the dark side.
I don't know. Yeah, I played KOTOR 2 a lot more than I played the first one.
And like, by the way, again, you can mod KOTOR 2, and my character in KOTOR 2 wore the Darth Revan armor, and the actual Vias, her body was Basila's. So.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
That definitely changes a lot of things.
But she's still blind and she still talks like...
Well, at least she doesn't have Jennifer Hale's voice.
Oh, stop it. Jennifer Hale's a good voice actress.
She's a better shepherd than Mark Meer is. But that's another topic. So, again, going back into video games, let's not forget that there are also a lot of bad Star Wars games.
Well, let's continue on the good. Battlefront 1 and 2. Probably,
which...
Probably two of my favorite Star Wars games other than KOTOR.
I know. Battlefront 3. I know how... I'm really excited for that game.
I flipped my shit when I heard about it.
I know that there are a lot of people out there that are like, well, it's EA, you know...
I don't care.
Okay, and...
I'll log in on the internet to play it.
It's like, I'm sitting here going, yeah, it's EA... But there's also a nice little 4-letter word down there that just...
DICE, motherfuckers.
Yeah. And DICE have done such a great job with the Battlefield series, up to this point, mind you. I can't say for Battlefield 4.
I have a feeling that the campaign in Battlefield 4 is going to blow hard, and I don't give a fuck.
Well, who plays Battlefield for the campaign?
Now, look, I think it was the guy you showed me who wasn't excited about the PS4. He gave like 5 reasons why he wasn't excited. He was like, how to make... Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 have a good campaign, and he actually mentioned Battlefront 2, which is where you go through
various
it's technically not it's not a different game mode, it's actually the same like maps where you play. I'm sure most of you who are listening to this have played them.
Galactic Conquest, that's what you're talking about?
No, because that's where you play as like the rebels or the Empire.
Well, you're like going around the galaxy and taking it over, right?
No. This is the actual campaign where you play as the 501st.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And you go through objectives on the map that you can play in the normal skirmish multiplayer mode, and it adds like little like go over here and get this, like pick up an item, and then like as you play more, it unlocks more classes that are like supposed to play on that mission, and like there's a mission where you and Kai Mindu, I can never say his name right. Kiadi Mundi are on Mustafar, and you have to go get a super laser conductor for the Death Star.
Yes.
And he doesn't know about that, and then I guess like afterwards, there's also a mission where you go into the Jedi Temple and have to kill all the Jedi, and you can eventually play as Darth Vader before you became Darth Vader and kill other Jedi with him. So like that's a really cool way. I hope they keep that. Mm-hmm. I would be happy if they kept that. But I mean, after years of having The Force Unleashed 1, which was okay, I mean whatever, and then it was like they're gonna release a new Star Wars game this year. Oh, I really hope it's Battlefront 3, and they released The Force Unleashed 2. And then when LucasArts went under, I had no sympathy at all, because all I can think of is like you've been sitting on a landmine. On a gold mine for
technically both. I mean, The Force Unleashed really isn't that good.
You've been sitting on a gold mine for technically 2 different games, KOTOR and Battlefront, and you haven't made a sequel for either of them, which would sell.
And the thing about that with KOTOR is that, granted, Obsidian did have a bit of a rush job with KOTOR 2. They've been sitting here for years going, we would love to make a KOTOR 3. We're just waiting on the ability to license it. We can start writing.
Oh yeah.
And LucasArts, they didn't do it. Battlefront 3, we found out that there was a Battlefront game that was in development.
Yeah.
But it was I wasn't 100% complete, but it was getting there. It was a playable build of it. And then it gets completely scrapped.
Which, by the way, it had one of the coolest things I've ever seen, where you could jump into I think we saw an A-wing. He jumps into an A-wing, lifts off, and flies into space and starts fighting, like, Death Stars in space.
I could easily see that happening with DICE.
So cool. Because can you imagine, like, if you start losing to space warfare, there's more, like, turbo laser target, like, bomb runs that can hit the ground. So if you neglect this, or if there's someone who's really good, hopefully, like, they're not going to give us, like, really hardcore, like, jet controls. Because that would kind of suck. Yeah.
I mean, Battlefield.
Battlefield, because I would be like, oh, I don't want to fly because I suck at it. But it would be super cool if, like, you had to make sure your team was cooperative enough to know, like, we have to balance both of these. Because if we lose one, the space can really hurt the ground. Or if, let's say, you, like, capture all the ion cannons on the ground and they start bombarding they start targeting the capital ships in the air. Like, how cool is that? That's awesome. Don't tell me that's not like the coolest thing ever. Why didn't they do this?
I guess the big thing that I can ask for with Battlefront 3 is I would love to see, because you have the Galactic Civil War, you have the Clone Wars. I would love to see more eras. I would love to see like maybe a KOTOR era, where you could have all of these Mandalorians versus the Sith Empire or something like that. I think that would be one of the coolest things that you could implement. I think that would be completely awesome. Definitely would like to see more customization options when it comes to outfitting your soldier, which I'm knowing DICE, that's pretty much going to be
Now hold on, do we know DICE is producing it? Like the same people that are doing Battlefield are doing...
Yeah, it's going to be developed by DICE.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not coming out till 2015,
I hope,
but...
Like, I'm worried about the shooting mechanics because blasters don't shoot fast like assault rifles do. They're like, choo, choo, choo. So I hope they don't turn it into, like, a
fast pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, like fast rounds per minute, yeah.
I hope they don't do that. Then again, like, if it's a great game, I'll be happy. If it's a bad game, I'll be like, whatever, but...
Better have a damn Hoth map.
Oh,
well, I mean, that was in the teaser, so,
I don't think they would skip that opportunity. Like, give me a good Hoth map and I'll be happy. But now we can go to my other favorite Star Wars game, which is X-Wing Alliance.
The PC?
Oh, man, I love that game. This is like the sequel to X-Wing and TIE Fighter. It was a third, I think, in that trilogy, and it is such an amazing game. I sunk a lot of hours into that game, where you play as like a family member of a trading company, and you have secret ties to the Alliance, and then there's like another family that rats you out, and then your station gets blown up, and you and your sister are the only ones that survive, and then you join the rebellion, and then you actually pilot the Millennium Falcon and blow up the Death Star at the end of the game. It's just awesome, and I don't know why they won't make another game like that.
Well, I think the problem was the fact that the Rogue Squadron games came out, which, I used to think very highly of Rogue Squadron 2.
Oh boy, here we go.
And for those of you who follow my channel, you've probably noticed that I played through the majority of the game. My opinion on that game has changed greatly. It started out good. It was like, alright, this is pretty cool. I'm going down the Death Star trench, I'm gonna fire the proton torpedoes, blow up the Death Star, and save the day. Then it starts getting on certain levels, like where you have to protect a target. It doesn't really tell you what target you're protecting. You don't know it until they're dead. Then you get to the last level, which, Derek, you've seen that video. You know exactly.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, you can't. I don't understand how you go. I don't understand how I beat that game. I really don't. It's such a difficult last level that I don't understand how anybody could beat it, really. Because the Millennium Falcon shouldn't be there. The Millennium Falcon going inside the Death Star?
Yeah,
that's always been a dumb thing about Jedi, though. So...
then we can move on to, I think,
well,
Jedi Knight 2.
Oh, yeah. Jedi Outcast, by far, is definitely...
Yeah, Jedi Outcast 2, which is one of my favorite Star Wars games.
Yeah. And people say, well, Jedi Academy. No. I'm telling you right now, Jedi Outcast is a much better game than Jedi Academy.
I slightly disagree. I think it's better. I also enjoyed Academy, and I like the fact that you could customize things better in Academy. But I think, obviously, Kyle Katarn is a better protagonist than whatever makeshift character you create. He's more like... to me, I've always liked the game where, like, I am playing along a character than I am playing a character. Like, like I've never really enjoyed playing... I love Skyrim and stuff, but, like, you're always playing you. Like, whoever you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather play, like, a Mass Effect where I'm playing Commander Shepard. You know what I mean?
Shepard.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm actually... Like, in that way, when people are talking, like, I feel like I'm watching... Like, I'm experiencing a part of something big, but I'm not... Like, to me, like, I'm not Commander Shepard. Like, I don't want to make Shepard look like me. I want to make... I want, like... It's one of those things, like... You don't want to be you. You want to be a hero.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think... That's one of the reasons why I think... Kyle Katarn is a little bit more like relatable.
There's even the precursors to Jedi Outcast with stuff like Dark Forces, which were pretty good for their time.
Very.
Granted that they are a bit of Doom clones, they're still pretty good. I mean,
not the second game.
Dark Forces 2?
No, that one was actually...
Yeah, that one had the 3D...
lightsaber and 3D.
Yeah.
I played that one, and that one was fun as hell, too.
And then...
like, you could mod it and, like, fly... Like, I remember my sister, we would log into the actual... Like, I don't know how the internet was this advanced at the time, but we actually logged in and played against other players. And my sister found hacks for the game, and she would turn them on. And, like, I think some of the people knew, or they just knew hackers, because they would just start, like, oh, hacker, and I would be playing, I would kill people, and it was awesome. But
I used to play Jedi Outcast a lot online with the PC. And that one had a pretty good modding community on it, too. I know a lot of people made some really, really silly mod levels, like a kind of like a horde mode thing where you would have waves of different enemies with increasing difficulty. It gets ridiculous to a certain point, but you could always just go in the console after pausing the game.
ATSTs.
No, and just type in God and it turns God mode on and you can't die. It's cool stuff like that. Let's not forget probably one of the most popular games, close to a launch title on the N64, and that's Shadows of the Empire, which has not aged well at all. That camera... I have fond memories of that game.
I do too, but not that fond. Like, I enjoyed the game, but then, like, I started playing things like Jedi Outcast.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like...
This is infinitely better.
What is this plebeian shit on the N64? Like, I don't want to play that. I liked Rogue Squadron more than I think... I played more of Rogue Squadron than I played with Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, Shadows of the Empire to me was a really cool side story. It helps fill in the gap between Empire and Jedi, finding Han Solo, tracking down Boba Fett, things like that. You get to play as not Han Solo Dash Rendar with his not Millennium Falcon, with his...
Dash Rider? Was that... Or is
Dash Rendar.
No, it was called the Star Render, or what was this ship called?
God.
Rider or something. I think it was something Rider, Star Rider, or I don't know.
Yeah, and then you got not Chewbacca, who's a droid.
Yeah.
You fight Boba Fett. You fight IG-88. You.
That mission was hard.
Oh yeah.
The IG-88 one was hard.
God, he's an asshole.
No, just getting there because you're on the train. You have to jump every now and then and duck because you're. That was granted I was like 8. That was fucking hard.
Oh yeah.
Now I guess we can go to bad games.
You just want to start with the most recent, Force Unleashed?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, those games take about 4 or 5 hours to complete, and I will give them this. The assets that were used to make the Force Unleashed come from a game that I wish had a sequel but never got one. And that's PsyOps, the Mindgate Conspiracy. That game was so ahead of its time, and sadly, the end of the game said to be continued, and we still have not got a sequel to this day. I'm still waiting on a PsyOps sequel because that game was awesome. It used the same whole thing, like when you look in the Force Unleashed, how you go into that over-the-shoulder view and you're moving stuff around and things like that. It's very cool on a technical level. However, its story, its characters, not memorable. They're not good characters. Darth Vader is really weird in these games to me. Like, he taking on the whole secret apprentice thing going on, and I don't know. I felt...
Well, then you make Luke your apprentice.
Well, that's in an Infinities expansion, though, which you throw Obi-Wan Kenobi into the engines of the Millennium Falcon. And he comes back as a ghost, and you fight his ghost, which I thought was the most ridiculous thing ever. I did think that their version of the Hoth invasion, except for the whole Luke Skywalker duel, was pretty cool. I mean, you got this guy who's not Darth Vader, and he's walking around in the snow with AT-AT walkers around him, and he's just like, rebels are running up with their blaster rifles, and he's just cutting them up right and left. Very reminiscent to what you would hear about in the way old Republic days of what Jedi or Sith would do on the battlefield. I thought that was cool at first, but then it just nosedives. That game, like I said, technically it's a great game, great physics, great destruction for what it was. It's just its plot is nothing to write home about at all. The forced love story between Starkiller and the pilot of his ship, that was always... It just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, now they're making out. When did this happen? The whole black lightsaber blade.
What else? I'm actually trying to... What other bad games were there?
Oh, there's Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike. That's a pretty bad game. That one's got on-foot missions where you get to play as Wedge Antilles on foot in Geonosis.
By the way, I think we established already, but we'll establish again, Wedge, underrated character.
Underrated?
Awesome. Underrated.
I would say he's justified.
No, he's underrated, isn't though? He's not rated high enough.
He did fire the closing shot in
I'm speaking this as like, people don't love him enough. He's the only pilot to have survived both Death Star runs, okay?
And Hoth.
Bitch is made of balls. His balls are made of steel, okay? Wait, no, adamantium. We can go all the way. I don't know how many people played Empire at War. I really like that game.
The RTS.
The RTS, very good game. I mean, it's not like... I wouldn't say it's not like on the level of...
StarCraft.
Well, they're totally... The problem with that is totally two different games. I mean... I actually really want someone in the arcade of StarCraft 2 to try to make a Star Wars total immersion mod, and I think they could do it, and I would love it if they did. I just don't know. The problem is, 3 races don't really, like the Zerg, I don't know how they would, whatever, but I digress.
It could be the Yusan Vong.
True. I should I should go on the forums on Battle.net and be like, bitches, get it done.
Bitches, get it done. What other bad Star Wars games are there out there?
I'm sure there's some, I'm just drawing a blank.
Well, I mean, there's Star Wars Obi-Wan.
I liked that when I played it.
There's Star Wars Jedi.
No, hold on. I liked it when I played it as a kid, which means I was like 13 when I played it, and I thought it was awesome. Okay.
There's Star Wars Jedi Power Battles.
Oh God, yeah. Now we're getting into it. Yeah.
Star Wars Masters of Terras Kasi.
What?
That's a fighting game for the PlayStation 1 with Star Wars characters, and it is god-awful. Boba Fett versus Luke Skywalker, and it's just like really blocky characters. Okay, it's a fighting game. This sucks. It's like a really shitty Soul Calibur.
Okay, Star Wars... What was the game where you played as a hover... Yeah, it was Attack of the Clones, I believe, where you actually like only played as tanks.
Well, I don't know. I never played it.
It was like Star Wars Attack of the Clones or something like that, where you only played as like a hovercraft, and like at the very end of the game, you had to destroy like this massive thing that could just destroy worlds and shit. And you're like, okay, but it was fun. It was a Star Wars game. I was a kid, teenager. I liked it.
A lot of people like Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. I personally, I'm not really that big into racing games.
I did enjoy that game. It was cool because it had that like kind of like it had the RPG, but like the customization elements of like getting better engines, and then like it had like if something happened to your engine, you had to like tap the right C button to get power to that engine. If you hurt it too much by hitting walls and stuff. Cool game. I enjoyed it. I was actually gonna say. Jedi Power Battles, was that the one where you and like a friend wasn't that for the PS1?
Yeah.
That was actually decent.
Well,
like a side scroll, like a 3D side scroll where you just ran around and killed shit.
There's always Star Wars Episode 2 on the Game Boy Advance. That's a pretty bad game. There's Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith.
There's Clone Heroes, okay?
Clone Heroes.
That game's or something like that.
For
the Clone Wars.
Oh no, there's a really, really good game that we've completely overlooked that desperately needs a sequel. Republic Commando.
You know, I did enjoy that game.
Yeah.
It was fucking hard though. Like super battle droids, like in the movie it was like they got hit like 3 times and they died. In this game it was like, fuck, it's a super battle droid. Fuck. Like no one has grenades. Fuck. Let's waste all our ammo to shoot. He's not dead yet. Fuck! Super Battle Droids were hard in that game. That game was fun though.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game.
Yeah, like there was that cool mission where you had to sneak aboard a disabled Republic cruiser, and then like use its guns to shoot it. That game was fun. I enjoyed that game.
Wasn't there also like a Star Wars Naboo?
Yeah.
Where you play as the Naboo Starfighter?
Yeah, that one was.
I never played that.
It was pretty much a clone of Rogue Squadron, but you also had like missions where you were on the ground. And they actually add space missions where you were in space. Like, you could fly in space, but eventually hit a wall. Like, you eventually hit a spot where you couldn't go anywhere. Yeah, invisible wall. But, because Rogue Squadron, you actually never left the atmosphere.
Yeah, at least I don't think so. I don't think you ever.
You never left, like, the ground. Because it was a Death Star mission, but you never actually were in space base, which actually they did in Naboo. Naboo was a fun game, but again, it was just a clone of Rogue Squadron, which was a fun game. They weren't amazing or like on like a to me the funnest game I've ever played was KOTOR. My favorite game is KOTOR. The best game I ever made was Happening.
Did you ever play Star Wars Trilogy Arcade with like the joystick?
Yes.
Yes, that was awesome.
Yes,
that was freaking amazing.
I feel as though they should be able to make a cooler version now. Since that game was probably made in the mid-90s.
Guys, HD re-release, let's get on this.
Yes.
Of course, I don't know how that's going to work, because, not everybody has a joystick controller.
Not everyone has a giant-ass arcade machine.
Yeah, that too.
If I became a millionaire, that would probably... If I became, rich, that would probably be one of the things I would want in my house.
Is a Star Wars...
that'd be
Star Wars
that'd be really cool.
Oh, yeah, man.
Like, there was the mission where you're on Endor and you're flying around on the speeder bike.
Yeah.
And then there's all the space battle. There's the first Death Star run and the second one.
And then there's Hoth.
I don't remember playing Hoth actually.
Yeah, Hoth. You do the whole battle and everything else. You got AT-ST shooting at you. You got probe droids shooting at you. It's pretty cool. I really like the Hoth level. And then you go inside Echo Base and there's a whole bunch of snowtroopers and kill all of them.
You can technically do that with a joystick with a controller.
Yeah, but that kind of takes the fun out of it. You know what I mean? Just doesn't have that same feel.
Probably the mouse would probably be the best.
Yeah, I could see that.
Actually, I'm gonna see if we can get that.
Get an arcade machine emulator.
Yeah, I bet I can. There's probably like a Flash game that'll play it.
And I would just like to say that we do not advocate piracy. Unless you own the game. Yeah, it kind of is, because you're not buying the game.
How much would it be to buy the game, though?
Well, you could probably get one of those...
Well, not the machine, but the actual, like, rights to the game to play it.
Well, that's the thing. You need the machine. It's all inside the machine. It's
the
all
machine probably costs, like, $1,000?
I don't know if I would go that far, because those machines are really prevalent. I would probably say it's more around $500-$600, maybe.
Still a shit ton of money.
Well, for an arcade machine, you'd be surprised. I've seen some games go upwards of $2-3 grand.
Well, yeah, I just mean...
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to go that, just get House of Dead. That game was fun.
Dude. House of the Dead kick ass. But anyway.
We should make a Star Wars version of that.
Oh, we should definitely have a House of the Dead cast next week. We're
2 hours long where we just talk about House of the Dead.
And a really shitty dialogue. Amy, Harry, what are you doing here? Sega. So, are there really any other bad Star Wars games you can think off the top of your head? I mean,
what's sad is I'm going to lay in bed tonight and be like, fuck.
We forgot to mention that one? How could we? In other news, Star Wars The Clone Wars in 2008 has an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, that's the actual shitty...
animated stuff?
Yes.
Which, yeah, going back to EU, since when did Anakin take an apprentice?
Hot-ass apprentice, too.
What? God, she's like 14.
I know. I don't know, it's whatever.
Yeah, so, final thoughts on Star
Wars. Because then it's like, then Revenge of the Sith happens, like, where's Ahsoka?
Yeah. Can you believe this guy? The moment you say final thoughts, it's like, bam, tangent. That's
but no, really, where's Ahsoka? Which they probably
kill her off somehow.
No, they'll probably have a reason. Like they'll end the series like they did the first Clone Wars series, where like the Battle of Coruscant's happening, and there's somehow Ahsoka is. But then again, you never hear about
maybe
her.
she's secretly Shaak Ti, and she gets killed in the deleted scene of Revenge of the Sith by General Grievous.
That's who it was. In the Clone Wars, I was trying to think about this. The Clone Wars, the miniseries, like Shaak Ti
and Ki-Adi-Mundi, and then 3 Padawans. Yeah.
No. Shaak Ti fights him again because he's the one that steals Palpatine, Chancellor Palpatine. Yeah. He's the one that steals him, and he does it in the most badass way ever. Because they go up the elevator and they go in the Chancellor's office and like, look, we gotta get you out of here. And he's like, what? I'm not scared. And then fucking General Grievous pops down and busts through the glass, but like he doesn't. He's like he looks through the glass for a long time and just looks at Palpatine. And as Palpatine's like, "I will not leave. I'm not scared." Then busts in, and they all there's 8 clone troopers who all start opening fire on him, and he just badassly kills them all. Like he karate like he's like very like kung fu-y. Like he dodges him, like grabs one with one of his legs, like crushes his helmet, throws him into another guy, and so. There's like 2 Jedi and Shaak Ti, and the 3 of them plus the Chancellor leave, and one of them is a Mon Calamari. No, an Indorian. Isn't that what they're called? With the long neck and the big beady eyes.
I'm not quite sure.
And he has this power that he like screams really loudly. I'll show you the clip, but he screams super loudly and it like reverbs, and he does it against Grievous, and like it throws Grievous back. And then, like, you see the Indorian, he's gasping, like he's exhausted. And then you see Grievous jump up, he's fine, and starts running again. And so they like, go down an elevator shaft, and all of a sudden they hear Grievous fall on top of said elevator. Yeah, and so they jump out, and they, like, lock the door. And I'm probably, like, doing a shitty job at telling you this, but... And then he does it again, he does this, like, it's like a sound wave thing that he does with his neck. And all of a sudden, Grievous, like, starts grabbing under the floor... and crawling forward, and you're like, holy fucking shit, this guy is awesome.
He's like a Terminator with lightsabers.
Finally, it's very, like, but a much quicker one. They get outside.
A much quicker one.
Oh, yeah, they get outside, and he captures Palpatine, jumps in like a ship, and as he flies away, you see Mace Windu, like, reach out and crush his heart, and that's how he gets his wheeze. And you're like, if you had seen that right before you saw Episode 3, you'd be like, oh my fucking god, I can't wait for him to be in this movie. And then he's this wheezy old... Actually, I forgot to mention this. I saw Episode 3. It was a 24-hour thing. We were going to watch all 6 movies at my friend's church. They had like at the first Baptist church in the mall. They have a movie theater in there. And we watched Episode 1, 2, and then we went to go see Episode 3, and we came back and watched 4, 5, and 6. And then that morning we went home.
Not bad.
I like slept through 5, unfortunately.
You slept through the one that you love the most.
Well, I slept through that and like part of 6. I was tired. It was like 6 in the morning by then. I was tired. But on that note, I guess we can end.
So, Star Wars Episode 7, you super stoked?
Not at all. I'm not a single bit.
Really?
I don't want them to happen, but they're going to happen.
What would it take for you to fill your seat in a movie theater with your bum? What would it take for you to get in that theater?
I don't know, because I don't want them to be better than the original, because I'm just jealous that way. Like, I don't want to be better. I guess I should, because like I really like Star Trek, the Star Trek, the new ones. Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. I didn't see Fall of Darkness.
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness. I didn't see that one, but it did have the same trope of like small Enterprise, bigger bad guy ship, like Nemesis, fucking Star Trek, the Star Trek. They all have this big ass ship, and then little Enterprise looking at it, and you're like, Jesus, can we get over this trope? But I don't know. I mean, hopefully they have some cool space battle scenes that I'll watch. I'm like, okay, that was enjoyable, but overall it was okay. And
well, supposedly when it comes to the films themselves, they're trying to make a point of using more practical effects than digital effects. Yes, I'm completely surprised that they're going this route, considering their track record for the past few decades. And
I want to see some good practical effects.
I'm all for it. If you guys want to actually blow up little miniatures of fighters again, I'm sold.
If you want to watch some good practical effects,
I just want to see the cast first.
Watch The Living Daylights.
You really love that James Bond movie.
I fucking love that movie, man.
Well, this isn't James Bond cast. That was the last time.
They hang outside of a plane. There's no CGI. Well, there is, I think, when Timothy Dalton's face is shown, but...
Well, yeah, that's obviously on a soundstage. They can't just have the leading man hanging out of the back of a Russian...
Alright, Tito, we're gonna put a parachute on you. It'll be okay.
Nah.
This is a great movie. The best James Bond movie.
Great job. You ruined it. You completely ruined Star Wars cast with James Bond cast. We had that weeks ago.
But we've watched The Living Daylights like 3 times since then.
Only because our friend wanted to.
It's true.
Actually,
we watched the first time. Just.
Oh yeah, when we were prepping for James Bond cast. But anyway, we're not going to do another 2 parts of Star Wars because
we've covered everything.
Yeah,
2 long podcasts.
We did a much better job than the first one, where I was kind of falling asleep and you were just like, I'm going to recite every major plot
point.
And
I did a great job. People who have never seen Star Wars before don't need to see Star Wars now because they listen to that podcast.
Well, except for the fact that you didn't mention the whole incest thing.
And on that note, we're done. Bye, guys.
Wait. So,
you ruined
last
it.
Words? Nothing. That's it.
That was supposed to be the incest joke was going to be the last words.
Well, no. Because I didn't tell everybody, have a good day, night, whatever you're doing when you're listening to this. Please don't be listening to this in your underwear. Until next time. PhantasmMask, and who are you again?
I'm Little Goose 91 on Steam, and my real name's Derek.
Yeah, we're signing off.
PWNcast.